Well, greetings, friends, and welcome to the Gospel Underground Podcast. This is episode 84, Kindness and Civility, or it might be called Civility and Kindness. We are broadcasting live for us, from two shed quarters in Radford and Blacksburg, Virginia. I think I'm here today with my friend Jesse Fuhr for our first ever two-piece online. Is that right? Zoom. We've done an interview with Matt Cruz from Boston. That's together right. Through Zoom, but this is our first two-piece, I think.
First time, just the two of us on Zoom. That's right. It's like we're so close, but yet so far away.
It's funny. Like, I would be looking at you in my reading chair usually if you were in the studio, but now I'm just looking to you on a monitor, and it's actually closer. But
yes, it's actually easier to see you because normally I have to look through all of your monitors and microphones,
cameras,
and there you are.
Yeah,
this is what you look like.
Yeah.
You look good.
My wife will say, "Why didn't you guys just do that all the time? Like during Corona, why did you risk 6 feet?" But we're about through that.
We always stayed 6 feet away.
Yeah, we did. We obeyed the government.
Yeah.
We obeyed the people that we're married to, and we have successfully navigated the sickness so far. But a little bit of spiking going on, but mainly in cases, not deaths. That's good. Testing is way up, so we expect positives way up, but certainly not out of the woods. Thankful for everyone wearing your stylish fly masks out there. We can tell people that care about fashion and those who don't. You got a pretty cool homemade wraparound double tie thing going on when you wear masks.
I do. You can, we've got a local seamstress craftswoman, member of our church. She runs a business called So Darn Close. Her last name is Close. So she was making masks from the beginning. I got a mask right away. Awesome. It's got a nice little spot for a filter, which I haven't used it, but
you can put in a viral value,
like
special
MER
value.
Yeah, so it's not bad. When I forget it when I go out and I have to wear like a surgical one because I got some backups.
Right. I got like painting dust mask backups.
Yeah. It doesn't feel as hip and cool, but it's healthy.
Yeah, healthy and makes people feel better, and I'm all for that. If there's things in life you can do that make others feel better that don't hurt you at all, I just don't get the resistance to these things. Guys, we're so thankful you joined today for episode 84. This is obviously going to be an episode. Jesse and I were speaking just before we jumped on air how important this is to us personally, but also for the world and in the future of our society to learn together to talk to each other differently. One of the things that I've noticed, and I think everybody has noticed, that either through Facebook debates or Twitter beatdowns, there has been a lowering of our level of discourse, public discourse, private discourse, mainly through division and disagreement, where we're now, we're not just playing in the sandbox. We're like throwing more than shade in our interactions with each other. And so this is coming from we're on number 4 of the 7 things that need to make a comeback in our society. Mental toughness, right? We can't just crumple. We have to be here. Marriage and kids, manufacturing, making stuff. It's a good, godly thing. And now civility and kindness desperately needs a comeback. Now, particularly in our public interactions, but I found that this kind of, when culture is created, when people participate in a way of being together, it's not just on Twitter, it spills out into other areas of life. In fact, social media interactions then can poison the wells of private interactions even, and difficulties in talking to others. Certainly in our politics or our ideological agreement, we need to do different in the way we interact. Now, I want to give a rejoinder today as we begin. I'm not talking about docility. In other words, that we should never speak clearly, loudly, or we should just tiptoe around real issues that we can't have, #real talk. I'm not saying that we should be passive, silent, have no opinions, be required either by force or pressure to agree with some enforced ideologies, right? I want to say that right at the beginning as strongly as I can, because sometimes people make a plea for civility and everyone's like, no, I'm not being nice or I'm not being quiet. Well, we're not asking here today on our podcast for docility or passivity or anything like that. What we do want to say strongly is there's something very wrong in our public discourse today. Now, the illustrations are legion, right, Jesse, that we could go to. I'm not even going to spend much time on the illustrations. Obviously, our president and other people in public office are name-calling on Twitter, disrespectful things from university presidents
right in our backyard,
in our state, right? Not Radford or Virginia Tech, but in other schools in Virginia, just very disrespectful discourse. We have the leader of the opposition tearing up State of the Union speeches for like everyone to see, so to speak. A lot of my African-American friends felt it was a little disrespectful of Joe Biden to say, right, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you ain't black. Just saying these things out loud, and then everybody, of course, goes off. We even have language now around that for people being triggered or giving triggered warnings, as if that we cannot hear something we don't like, and we have to lose our sanity and drop into a Donald Trump cesspool of discourse if someone says something that we don't like. And so this is a problem. I was even on my Twitter today seeing how a person from Hollywood and a person from the U.S. Senate going at it, talking trash like they were 14-year-old kids. And so this is going to be hard for us because we feel so passionately about the things we believe. But if we don't learn again, and this doesn't reemerge in our society, this is something that will certainly spiral things either further out of any type of civil, kind, gentle society where we can build something worth of value together. Some of you may be familiar with the book, The Coddling of the American Mind. We've mentioned it here on the podcast before by Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist. He's Thomas Cooley. I don't know, this is a lot of names. Thomas Cooley, professor of ethical leadership at New York University Stern School of Business. Jonathan Haidt and co-authored that book with Greg Lukianoff, The Coddling of the American Mind, saying, hey, look, we have to have free speech. We have to have intercourse in our ideas. We have to have interchange. Jonathan Haidt, one of these authors, the business ethicist, psychologist, was interviewed in the idea section of The Atlantic just a few weeks ago, May 24th, 2020. Now, in this article, he was speaking, and pay attention to the dates here, about our divided country, and he said the following. Around 2008, Haidt had become increasingly concerned about how politically polarized America was becoming, and polarization has only worsened in the past dozen years. Haidt goes on to say, I've gotten more and more alarmed every year since then, he told me. This is an interview in The Atlantic. And there are several trends that are very disturbing, including the rise of affective polarization or mutual dislike and hate each political side feels for the other. When there's so much hatred, a democracy cannot work right, he said. You can't get compromise. You get exactly the situation that the founders feel, that James Madison wrote in Federalist 10, which is faction, which is people care more about defeating the other side than they care about the common good. Jesse, if we are only trying to burn down the ships of our opponents, what are we left with?
Nothing, man. I mean, that I think that Haidt's interview there on The Atlantic is so worth a read, so insightful because, even just that way of thinking about how we exist in the world with our neighbors, with real life people, is are we trying to have a discourse towards the common good of our region, our nation, our land, or are we trying to win? Are we and it's not just win, it's win at all costs, burn down, it's kind of that, burn it all down way of winning. And so, yeah, man, we got nothing left.
And just to be clear, Jonathan Haidt calls himself an atheist. Jesse and I both read this interview, and we really enjoyed it. We've read some of his book, Coddling of the American Mind. We think he's saying really good things. And we don't agree on maybe the most fundamental things of life. Right. But downstream from that, there is a reality that flows out into our common life together. And if we can't compromise and build and shift and accept different ideas, democracy cannot flourish or even persist, because eventually some boot will fall on the necks of someone. And this is something, ironically, in a tweet from a pastor named Duke Kwan this past week as well, said, coercion, that's forcing somebody, right? And shaming apparently are only two remaining tools for ordering public life. Whatever happened to, I don't know, persuasion? So Pastor Quan both said coercion and shamed those who are doing it on the Twitter as an example for us. Now, if people are only coerced, they never come out to making their minds either individually or in groups of people. The only tool left is the stick, and then shaming causes, and this is a problem. When you just shame people, you cause people to disappear, to not offer any opinions in the public exchange of ideas. And in a free society like ours, that's necessary because we need to check each other. We need to see, hey, am I wrong here? Am I right here? And if we cannot do that, particularly with those who we disagree on, ideas start to run downstream quickly without check and into ditches on either side of the street, whatever the ideological view might be. Some of this difficult came to a head around what was called Blackout Tuesday. John Stonestreet in a Breakpoint commentary said this: some businesses that did participate in Blackout Tuesday, for if you are unfamiliar with that and you're not on social media, this was like, hey, I'm going to post a blacked out square in order to support black voices and to affirm and to elevate and to support black business, etc.
Which I think was originated in the music industry, right? That's where it started, and then it
morphed, got co-opted. Some unanticipated consequences were, like, if you went to Instagram, it was just, instead of elevating certain voices and opinions, there wasn't silence. There was just a black screen of no pictures, no voices, no anything. But the complexity of it, this is something that John Stonestreet said in a Breakpoint commentary. Some businesses that did participate in Blackout Tuesday by posting a black square were accused of co-opting a social movement to attract customers. But business that did not participate were accused of cowardice or complicity in racism. On Twitter, it was the same thing. Some who have spoken out explicitly against racism were criticized for not doing it earlier, or not doing it at just the right time, or for virtue signaling, or lacking the authority to speak on the issue because they weren't people of color. But nearly everyone on Twitter felt the pressure of having to post something. It's enough to baffle even the most well-meaning advocates, right? So people trying to do something and say, no, you be quiet. And then if you don't say something, it's like silence is violence. And lots of people were, how do I even express myself, if I am to express myself at all? And then so, people either get loud and flame each other about that, or they disappear altogether and say, I ain't saying nothing in order to not be construed. I've obviously not been silent. I'm certainly want to speak my own mind and care about things. Certainly going to do so today, Jesse. We want to help our audience and anyone you might want to share this with some just general principles for civil engagement with other people. Sometimes we think everything I learned that's of value. There was a book in the past called this, Everything I Learned in Kindergarten. How to play in the sandbox with another kid. Obviously, there's some who punch kids that are in there. Some throw shade, some throw dirt, some take toys, some share with people, some cry, some scream, some are quiet until they unleash rage. The sandbox metaphor is valuable to us, but in this world out there, the scriptures, right? Jesse and I, we're trying to accord ourselves as followers of Jesus. How do we go about engaging civility and kindness in our discourse? Now, there's a couple words that kind of line up with these. Kindness simply means a graciousness, right? A goodness or benevolence towards people, right? Not being a jerk, extending goodness or kindness, graciousness, benevolence towards others. Civility has to do with a courtesy offered in the public sphere, right? A respect for people. I think of the scripture in 1 Peter that says, in your heart set apart Christ the Lord as holy, being prepared to make a defense for anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that is in you. That's the apologetics verse, right? Yet do so with gentleness and respect. This is what we mean, kindness, civility. There's actually a great outline in one of the books of the New Testament that is kind of a book full of imperatives or commands, also full of proverbial wisdom. It's one of the wisdom books of the New Testament, the book of James. It concords a lot with Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. And there's this passage in there, and this most likely, when it says being quick to hear, most likely, most commentators believe this means quick to hear God's truth, right? And then the effects on life, but it has application broadly. It says this, know this, my beloved brothers or brothers and sisters, this is that word for family in the New Testament. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Now, Jesse, this little outline is simple. It's memorable. Sometimes we think we're to be quick to tweet, quick to blow people up because I'm angry, I guess. But we're going to just use this as a little outline to talk about, hey, this is how we can show kindness to others and civility to others. Slow to speak. Jesse, have you ever been around folks that maybe run their mouth quickly?
Well, that's not me personally. I don't struggle with any of these things, but
none of them at all.
Right? Yeah. No. I mean, I can't even count the amount of times that I have. Usually not till later, but regretted how quick I was to speak on something. And one of the things that I found with this is often what manifests as anger in me doesn't seem as angry as it might in someone that's a little more hot-tempered.
Yeah.
But like if I get internally fired up because I think that you're maybe saying something that's theologically wrong or imprecise even, and I'm starting to press and maybe the ways that I'm speaking quickly are more subtle, more maybe even more demeaning in a kind of oh really, you think that's what it is? Well, have you thought about this?
Yeah. It makes me think of a woodpecker, right? Woodpeckers leave some pretty dominant damage, like holes, like what did that? But it was like da-da-da-da-da over time. Yeah.
And so I think that's just my admonition, my encouragement to brothers and sisters out there who maybe aren't as obviously angry,
explosive, volatile.
Yeah, like I'm probably not going to blow you up, and I'm especially slow on things like Twitter because I just try to mainly don't go on them. That's my strategy. Yeah. But I can sometimes be quick with a sharp word, with a kind of condescending word, with an argumentative word, and so anyway, I'm just saying me. I'm the one.
Yeah.
Read that. So thank you for bringing that up. Is this an intervention?
Yeah. No, not particularly you. It's with all of us. This is an intervention for all of us. This is in the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, one of my favorite books in the Bible, the book of Ecclesiastes, which is kind of like it's an upside down argument. It's saying, hey, if there is no God, here's what the world is like. It's all meaningless, empty, that kind of thing. It kind of runs us empty from our own worship of things that aren't God. I love the way it is, very philosophical about meaning. This is in Ecclesiastes 5. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know what they are doing is evil. Do not be rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven and you are on earth, therefore let your words be few, right? For a dream comes with much busyness and a fool's voice with many words. And so, hey, when we draw near, we want to listen to God and to others, because hasty, rash words, right, they just wreck up some stuff, and it's not wise. And one of the things that I think the Bible is conscious of constantly is that we're not just speaking to people. We're speaking before God as well as to human beings, and that God cares about the way we use our mouths. In other words, Jesus, I think even every hasty word will be brought into judgment, right? That's you think about that for more than 2 seconds. It makes you want to put your hand right over our mouths. James 1, if anyone thinks he is religious, does not bridle his tongue, deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. When Proverbs 10:19, when words are many, transgression or sin, right, is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is prudent. I know some of you guys out there have gotten yourselves into trouble with your mouths before, right? I know I have. Some of the dumbest stuff I've done is just run off at the mouth in the wrong way at the wrong time. Arrogant speech, this is Proverbs 27:2, let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. This is what a big problem I have with Christian or anybody really, brand building, where you constantly hype yourself, talk up yourself. And I think when anybody does that in our presence, it grows very offensive over time. And that's why I think wisdom says, this is Proverbs 30:32, if you have been foolish, exalting yourself, or if you have been devising evil, put your hand over your mouth. And that's kind of a visual, if you will. If someone is literally putting their hand over their mouth, it's like, hey, I need to stop this self-exalting, this self-centering, this prideful speech, because not only does it grow offensive to people, the scriptures say that God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble.
Isn't that doesn't Job do that in the end? Isn't he left his hand?
Yeah. The book of Job. That's a true story from my early Christianity. I was I think a sophomore in college, and we used to have these Bible studies for athletes in the women's basketball locker room at UNC Chapel Hill, and somebody said, turn to the book of Job, and I couldn't find it. And then I was like, hey, Job's always been Job to me. And I had to get made fun of by church kids.
The book of Job. I can't find the book of Job.
Yeah, I can figure it out. Book of Job, man. Job's interesting, right? At the end of that book, I mean, Job goes through hell. He loses everything. He loses health, loses money, loses family members, his own friends. They're like, oh, it's your fault. You must be doing something bad. His wife said, forget your integrity, curse God and die. It's like, it's a fun time when you're losing everything and all your friends and your wife are piling on. And he kind of gets a little grouchy about it towards the end. And then God finally speaks to him, gives him an audience, and then just basically dresses the dude down. He says, where were you when I created this? And where were you when I bring the galaxies? Where were you? And basically in God, in a direct, strong way, in a kind way, shows Job that he's a human being and that he doesn't know the big picture and story, and that God does. And then I think you're right. He says
his mouth.
Yeah,
right?
he says, I need to shut up. No, I'm done.
That's what I think. I find the Job picture so instructive, because God really essentially says, hey, I don't find any fault in Job, right? Like he blessed Job in the end. But he still puts Job in his place, essentially saying, hey, well, here's what I see you doing is you're going up here. And from up here, you think you can look down and make judgment statements about the way the world works, how it ought to work, how I ought to be treated, and really what you need to do is realize you're a human, you're finite, you have limitations. And so there's this kind of humble epistemology, right?
Yeah.
How do I know anything? Well, I don't know. God's going to have to tell me. I can't. I'm not going up here. There's
this interesting thing in the history of philosophy. You mentioned the word epistemology, like how do people know things? And there's the extremes from all the way extreme skepticism. Human beings cannot know the things, right? We can't know anything really, right? And that's the harshest position. And then there's this kind of like human beings, because of their own mental reasoning abilities, all of a sudden arrive. If you have, start with the principles and move up from the foundation, you arrive at this indubitable position of knowing all things. In fact, there was a professor at the university very close to here when I took philosophy at Virginia Tech who had an online article that was very arrogant. I'm not going to say the guy's name. He's retired. He might be even passed away now. And he basically said, I know everything, but I can't store it all in my brain, so I don't know everything anymore because I have to replace things in his brain. And so there's this either skepticism, or you can't know anything, and neither can you, or I can know everything, and you kind of seat yourself in kind of a God's eye view, right? And this is debated. Since there is no God's eye view in people, we can't have a view from nowhere. Therefore, we really don't know anything. There's something to be said for that on both sides, because I think what we need, and I think you said this, humble epistemology. We need to approach things with knowing that we're human beings that have a limited view. We don't know all the facts that can be known. We don't even know all the facts where they should go in an argument sometimes. You have these facts, somebody else has these facts, but you're using them for different purposes. We're not really coming towards a true view of something. And really, the only one who does know is God, and that's why in our tradition, revelation becomes so important. What if there is a God's eye view? God could tell us some things. And thank God we believe that God does. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Jesse, I discovered this week there is a kind of long tradition in philosophy, and particularly in the Roman Catholic tradition, debating whether or not anger is virtuous ever or not. And this is a quote from Thomas Aquinas. In fact, I saw this on social media early this week, from quoting that this was from John Chrysostom, kind of the Eastern Greek early preacher in the church, but it's actually a quote of Chrysostom in Aquinas, and most people think Chrysostom did not say this, but this is in Aquinas. It says, lack of passion, of anger, is also a vice, because a man who is truly and forcefully rejects evil will be angry at it. So Aquinas is going to argue there is a good anger, right? The lack of anger makes the movement of the will against evil lacking or weak. He then quotes John Chrysostom. He who is not angry, whereas he has cause to be, sins. For unreasonable patience is the hotbed of many vices. It fosters negligence and incites not only the wicked, but the good to do wrong. In other words, when you see something that is outrageous, that is evil, it ought to anger us or cause outrage. So, but for the most part, in the biblical witness, anger is a troublesome thing. And I think anyone who's been around a more combustible anger, or maybe a drunk, angry person in their upbringing, or somebody was abusive spouse, a wife or a husband who has extreme anger issues, we realize why the scriptures that we read earlier says that man's anger does not bring about the righteousness of God. This is from the wisdom literature, mainly Psalms, Proverbs, and then one passage from the New Testament I'll share. Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man. Now, this is a simple translation of the Hebrew. Don't go with a wrathful man. I'm going to tell all my daughters that. Hey, man, you don't need to be going with him, right? He's an angry dude. In fact, my daughters have asked me, Dad, what do you care about? And someday if we were to get married, what do you care to see in those gentlemen? I say kindness. Kindness. That was Proverbs 22:24. Proverbs 29:22, a man of wrath stirs up strife, always causing drama, and one given to anger causes much transgression, right? Stirs up sin, right? Psalm 37:8, refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. That's out of Psalm 37, verse 8, that was read by James Corden's dad on I believe, the Tonight Show or something. What show is James Corden on? If you hadn't found that video, go see that, guys. Maybe we'll put it in the show notes for you. James Corden, the British comedian. I guess his dad is a Bible salesman or a Christian book salesman, and so he gave a tutorial for Donald Trump on how to hold the Bible. It's really funny, and the most powerful part of that is he reads Psalm 37 at the end. And refrain from anger, forsake wrath, fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. And then finally Ephesians 4:26 in the New Testament, which isn't written in the imperative, be angry, or in your anger, sin not, or do not sin. And that's very important, that if you are angry, there is this temptation to turn it into something else. And I don't know, guys out there, I know probably every one of you had seen your anger blow something up or take something in a direction that you later regretted. And so learning that discipline, that spiritual gift from God, even of self-control, is of utter importance. And sometimes that takes quiet deliberation rather than simply reacting or triggering. A triggering happens to triggerable people, right? And we want to be people that can patiently listen and weigh what someone's saying in order to respond in a way, in the positive way that same chapter in Ephesians 4 teaches about speaking. Everything we say should be useful to building up people, to give grace to those who hear. Now, our ultimate aim is love. We want to love people, right? That's the great commandments: love God, love neighbors. Little children, let us love, not in word or talk, but in deed and truth. And the way we speak to certain people certainly is one of our deeds. 1 1 Peter 4, the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled, sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. Above all, love one another earnestly, since love covers over a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. Well, Jesse, our last section of this podcast, we want to talk together about social media, because it is kind of involved now in some of our discourse in a way that may or may not be helpful. What's your take on social media? Base positive for society, or would you say, if you had to weigh it out, negative for our culture?
I don't know how to do that, but it's well documented here on the Gospel Underground that I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to, or at least a reluctant adopter of social media. And so probably I'd be more inclined towards there's a more vice than virtue. But recently we've seen what social media can accomplish at its best, which is 12 to 15 years ago, I would have never known who George Floyd is.
That's right.
And so we wouldn't have, I don't think we would have been able to have a galvanized kind of national moment around something like that, the way that we were able to, or are able to, and continually having now. So I do think it's one of those kind of, there's room for great positive with social media. My own personal, as far as what it does to me, is there's a war.
Yeah.
And typically it's hard for me to engage in social media without being angry. This depends on which kind of avenue of social media we're talking about. We have a little kind of group me stuff going on with our church, Marco Polo kind of video chatting in church in the Bonhoeffer house. And those are almost entirely positive, virtuous, good, connecting with people, staying up, praying for people, giving updates. But then there's other things like Twitter or Facebook where I'm weak. And I know that when I get on there, it's like all the things that tap on my weaknesses are just tap.
They're right there all the time.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know how to answer it broadly. I'm just touching on all, it's complicated.
Yeah, the receipts aren't yet in. I'm sure there are being studies done and will continue to be done for decades about the effect of these platforms on our social discourse. Most scholars that I have seen, Gene twinge about the effect of social media and devices on young people is that it's probably a negative and maybe worse than we realize.
Right. Yeah. And I want to just mention one more thing along with that is, I do think that there's the law of unintended consequences that we're not really even aware yet of the toll that some of the media use will have on us. One thing in particular that I find to be pretty much across the board is when we're removed like this and we're not embodied. Like, granted, when I'm in your study in the global, worldwide headquarters of Power of Change, I can't actually see your face quite as well as I can right now.
You can see the guns, though. And you can watch what you say, right? Because
that's right. No, but yes, but in part, yes, right? Like, so we can sit and have a conversation. I can read your body language better. You can read my body language. We can, Casey can pop her head in and we can have a conversation. The three of us, we're embodied with one another in a way that this removes us. And what happens when we're removed physically is I can treat you more like a stranger or more like an enemy or more like even like an idea, like you,
a hypothetical person almost.
Yeah. If you bring an idea I disagree with, then I can just treat you like this conceptual idea that I'm attacking. But what I can't see is how you feel about that and that affects you because we're removed.
And you don't have to care. You don't even have to care. Right. This is, again, Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist we're quoting earlier, the business ethics guy. Social media essentially gives a megaphone to the extremes. So it's very hard to know what most people really think. And when you look at the people who are loudest on Twitter and elsewhere, it's quite clear that this pandemic is turning into another culture war issue where people on the left see what they want to see and people on the right see what they want to see.
Were we talking about that with the with Chaz out in Seattle? Or
yes, yeah. Me and you in real offline conversation, we're talking about that. Yeah.
How what's happening in Seattle with the autonomous zone? Well, I have no idea, to be honest.
Right.
Because it just totally depends on who's the one telling us about it, and whether or not they're doctoring their pictures and what their take is, and you kind of basically that same picture. It's just extremes. It's
And having watched how social media is used personally and up close, and having to internally wrestle with how I'm using it, repenting, and then using it wrongly myself, or it's very hard. But these are some of the things that it's given towards, right? Gotcha tweets. We want to see somebody doing something bad or something we consider bad from our ideological point of view, and we want to tweet against someone. And I think this is the most insidious thing and probably the most disastrous thing. And we do it to be seen by a lot of other people. In other words, if I got a real witty, pithy way to slam dunk somebody, I do it, and then I might get seen by thousands. I might get a bunch of little dopamines from all the people that like my slam dunk of someone else. And this idea of doing things in order to be seen by people is something that Jesus actually taught directly against. And he was speaking of that in matters of religion. And certainly when we, whatever religion people are living out there in them woods, we're doing it to show off or to show ourselves. It's very dangerous, right? And it's hurtful, because if someone gets, he slayed him, he owned them. Owned the libs. You see that a lot, or the resistance folks who showing up Donald Trump or something. It's kind of like a show and it's a show for people who approve of your views already, and then it's just kind of dismissive and hurtful, and just kind of, it's like charging up the next shot from someone else, like you're getting your life back, ready to go back at them. Hot takes, people love hot takes because there is this the old slogan that all PR is good PR. If people are talking about you and you're the attention in your brand, it's never bad. And there are people that just want to say stuff to draw attention to themselves, and because of this, social media creates a false view of what's real, particularly when it becomes these echo chambers, or we're listening to all the people we like and we're watching people show their stuff on Twitter. We're not seeing really a good picture of the world, but yet we can think we are. This came through really clearly by an author. I have a couple of his books over here. Mark Sayers, he's an Australian guy, wrote 2 books recently, Disappearing Church, Reappearing Church. He had a thread this week. He's not on Twitter a lot, but sometimes he jumps on, drops some stuff, and then disappears, and I happen to see it. So this is the good use of Twitter. But this is a really, really good observation. He says this: however, the trending topics and hashtags of social media often obscure more than they reveal. They are even more manufactured than the legacy mass media news cycle, reflecting back to us an amalgam of our own preferences and biases, harvested by algorithms and rich with competing agendas driven by a legion of actors. Bots, there's robots on Twitter that aren't even real people stirring up stuff, many times sponsored by powerful state actors against the interests of the United States. Bots, attention-hungry celebrities, governments, political platforms, clickbait profiteers, and random individuals. For fleeting moments, like a wave cresting, these disparate forces seem to coalesce into a network consensus, appearing to offer us clairvoyance into the actual mood of the moment. Yet because the internet is a complex and dynamic network, its consensus can change in the blink of an eye. One can find themselves one day secure in social consensus, and the next day they are canceled. Thus, such an attempt to read the world and gauge public mood requires total dedication. We must continually sit in the crow's nest, anxiously scanning the horizon for changes in the digital zeitgeist. The totality of such a continual surveillance of the online mood can create a trap, where we mistake this world for the real world, and we find ourselves repeatedly sideswiped by a more accurate barometers of public opinion, such as electoral results. What seemed like the public was only a silo.
That is that's strong. That is strong. And it reminds me, a little bit of Marshall McLuhan, the media is the message, the media sociologist who really showed that media is not neutral.
The delivery mechanism.
Because the delivery mechanism. And so in social media, the delivery mechanism itself is so interconnected with all of these different actors. Man.
And they all have different agendas, right?
All with different agendas. Yeah.
Some are there just to make money, gather lots of clicks, get a lot of visibility on a timeline. Some are there because they want people to pay attention to them. Some are there just to cause trouble. And we don't know. Even like what's presented to us, right, is done by usually algorithmic analysis of things they think you like or going to fire you up, or things you interact with more. And then it creates a tidal wave of consensus that's false. And to me, this is something I've really struggled with, that I can get despairing thinking, oh my gosh, everybody in the world is unsensible radicals on every side, and we're really going to burn the world down, until you interact. I've been on some calls recently with lots of people from different backgrounds, and yet, black, white, whatever. And really the division, people are really working. People of goodwill are working to solve real problems in the world, move to a better future. And we're not always reminded of that on social media. And that's why relationships matter the most, like real relationships with real human beings in communities where we can hear others and be heard. Hate meaning Jonathan Haidt, not Hate. His analysis is very similar to social media. The relationship matters more than the message. He's talking about human relationships. That's why he says, I like the university, especially one that includes a diversity of viewpoints. It can be powerful because you cultivate these relationships within a community that says our job is not to win, but our job is to learn. That's why the internet, and especially Twitter, are the worst places for this, because you don't have relationships and people are trying to show how smart they are. They are trying to show how devoted they are to their team. So the kind of political engagement, the kind of public square that we get from social media is generally terrible. And again, that's why I love universities so much, and that's what it is for me. The times I remember most is when my beliefs were shredded and I was shown new ways to, not when my beliefs were shredded, but I was shown new ways to think or given new ways to think. And he closes this. Does anyone really think we're going to win people over by insulting them and spouting hatred towards them, he added? Or are we going to win them over by listening one-on-one as individuals, human to human, American to American? And that's why Dr. Walter Strickland, your friend, said, you are not a social media handle. Don't feel pressure to post and repost everything to show that you care. Advocate locally, be incarnate, and do the work in your community and your church. And let's get it done today.
This whole conversation, which, by the way, I love that you brought the Walter. I actually had his tweet pulled up on my phone to contribute, but you beat me to it. And so I'll contribute something else that's been really formative for me, very convicting for me. You may have heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, but with his little book, Life Together, there's a few, the whole book is like it's just like getting punched by someone that loves you and just wants to be like, hey, here's another one.
It's like, I know that I don't do that. I know that, but I don't do that.
There's another one. One thing that he says in there is, I can no longer condemn or hate a brother for whom I pray, no matter how much trouble he causes me. He's really trying to make a point that it has really made me question my relationship with people through media, through social media, my relationship with them when I'm in a discourse with them, is how often, and I don't want to answer this because it's too revealing of my own soul, but how often do I stop and pray, not that I will win the fight, not that the other person will come to grips with reality, which means see things the way that I see them, but actually pray for them. And it's just not, that's not a normal practice. And for me, and I doubt it is for most people that are engaging in discourse online. Another thing that he says in Life Together is, he says, there's a kind of listening with half an ear that presumes already to know what the other person has to say. Yeah. It's an impatient, inattentive listening that despises the brother and is only waiting for a chance to speak and thus get rid of the other person. This is no fulfillment of our obligation, and it's certain that here too our attitude toward our brother only reflects our relationship to God. Oof. He says it's little wonder that we're no longer capable of the greatest service of listening that God has committed to us, that of hearing our brother's confession. In other words, he's going on to say, hey, I can't actually minister to my brother or sister in deep ways, helping them to hear the gospel, have the gospel applied to them, if I can't listen to them in lesser ways and these sorts of discourses that we have.
I've actually seen this, Jesse, in people's replies on Twitter, where people literally will look at people's profile picture, their profile, and a few tweets, and they think they know them, and then dismiss them as such. This is not... One, it's not possible. There's this false intimacy that social media provides. It's, hey, I think I know this person because I read their opinions every now and then. Or even worse than false intimacy, shallow intimacy, where, hey, somebody liked my thing, so we're now cool. And really, there's no real intimate, transparent knowledge of one another whatsoever. And so, what's at stake in all this, right? We've talked a lot. We've done episodes here on the Underground about virtue. That God wants to form certain things in human beings, form character into us, that we are being changed. Who we are matters more, and who we're becoming matters more to God than the argument we win. And if we engage in such a way in the world where it has a debasement, a wreckage in our own soul, it makes us angrier person. It makes us vicious people. It makes us less loving people, less understanding, less compassionate, and less truthful, and less clear in our commitments. Our example to others suffers, and it matters deeply to God. This is something that shocked me. I was reading a book that I think is an underappreciated book. When I was training young guys for years in New Jersey, we'd have all the guys read this book. It's by a man named Ajith Fernando. Fernando is a Sri Lankan. He's been living in a country torn by civil war and actual rebellions and revolutions and things between people in the country in Sri Lanka. And he wrote a book called Jesus-Driven Ministry. And he's speaking to kind of the Christian leadership and Christian community. But I think it has a lot of application to the community at large who may value freedom, liberty, justice, equality, a country made up of many people and cultures. And he says this in his book, Jesus-Driven Ministry: I fear that the behavior of the present generation of Christian leaders is such that we are going to give the next generation a very poor example of godliness. If we do not arrest this trend, and I think this book is around 2008, maybe, publication, and we have not arrested this trend. If we do not arrest this trend, we could be responsible for an outbreak of cynicism in the younger generation, where doctrines of the faith are not honored anymore because the leaders of the earlier generation did not adorn the doctrine with holy lives. This situation could turn and give rise to another dark age where rampant nominalism and powerlessness will plague the church.
I didn't think it would happen that quick.
It's
when was that written?
I believe the publication on that is 2008. I have to check, but it's about a decade old. Our kids are watching. Young people are watching. If you are a Christian leader in interacting in the public square, people see. It's disappointing. It's troubling when we disregard character that should be shaped and being conformed into the image of God, not in a self-righteous, pharisaical, judging people way, but when there's a complete disregard for even trying or even thinking repentance is necessary to the life of faith. It'll leave a disaster in its wake, and the consequences of that could span into generations. And that's where I pray, forgive us, Father. We don't know what we do, and we need to change. Kindness and civility towards the other actually creates an environment where the real exchange of ideas, the proclamation of the truth of the gospel is not only possible, but actually, in my view, Jesse, more fruitful. You got any final thoughts? for us?
Only that I find this, I'm more hopeful right now than I was an hour ago. So I appreciate this conversation, especially thinking through the categories of kindness and civility. Oftentimes, I'm thinking about charity or grace, and I think civility maybe is more helpful.
Yeah, because
civility gets at the idea that there's kind of rules of engagement. It's not just a blanket sort of, hey, I trust you and love you, so whatever you say is fine. But maybe I don't. Maybe I don't think it's fine.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fact that I need to treat you with respect because you're made in God's image.
How am I going to treat someone, particularly when I do not agree what they are saying? This is a good practice for those of you, obviously we are in a digital world with smartphones and social media. Instead of just posting your disagreement with someone you're actually friends with or casually, if you follow each other, why not direct message them and ask for clarity and ask for interaction? It keeps it out of the thunderdome of the public view and allows friends to interact with clarity in writing, which I think clear thinking in writing can be done in any medium that involves communication. Shoot the DM instead before you post. How about you talk to the person? Text them if they're an actual friend of yours in real life. Hey man, I saw you post this. What's going on? Are you all right? What is that about? Hey, I had a question. I needed to clarify what you mean by this. I'm trying to learn. And look, and if you mess up and if you don't say the right thing in interaction with a friend, hey, they might come at you and blow you up, but you know what? That's okay. We can overlook the sins of each other because we're family and we are seeking to understand and be understood. And as a Christian community, we're actually seeking to follow Jesus together. And we're trying to get better. We're trying to shape a more just and good future on earth as it is in heaven because we have a common great King who's told us things that are true. In being a jerk for being a jerk's sake or winning your political argument is not the game that Jesus taught us to play. Jesse, man, it's been great being here on Zoom with you, brother. We're going to be mobbing again. I'm wearing an Anthony Ashnault wrestling shirt. He was involved in some Twitter drama recently. Mobbing might have to do with something, with the way you wrestle. We'll have to see what that means. But thank you guys for joining us. We're glad to be here with you guys in the Gospel Underground. The Gospel Underground is a joint production of Power of Change and the Life Together author Bonhoeffer House, led by Jesse Fury. Review us on iTunes. 5 stars are acceptable. Send your comments, feedback, questions, anything you would like us to take up here on the Underground to info@gospelunderground.org. We're a dialogue taking place sometimes on Twitter in the borderlands between the church and culture. And we hope to see you there or not. Peace.
Peace.